In this video, you will learn how parent and child components in Vue can communicate with each other. Hi, I am Ekaterina from Monsterlessons Academy, where I am teaching you how to become a developer or improve your skills of being a developer in learning by doing way. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will link everything that I am mentioning in the description box below. And just to remind you, this video is the part of free series Vue for Beginners, so let's jump right into it. In previous video, you learned about property binding and event binding, and now it's time to talk about communication between components. So for now we have only our app view, which is actually the global component for layout, and now inside we have only our users list, which is actually a route component. But let's say that we want to reuse our component to render the list of users. So for now everything is coupled really strong because we wrote everything inside our route component, which means actually we can't reuse anywhere this component with rendering users, remove button, and input to add user on the top. So let's try to make it better so we can make a sharable component which we can use everywhere. So actually we can still use some route component, for example users, and this user list I want to move to sharable component. So let's do exactly this now. First of all, what I want to do is create here the new component users.view, and now this will be our route component. Inside we need some template, so let's just write it once again, and inside I want div with the text users. And now here we need a script, and let's close our script, and inside we will have export default, and here will be our name. And in this case, the name will be just users. So now we want to use this component instead of users list. So we need to go to router index and change here users list to users. And here then we have views users. And here on the bottom we need to render users instead of users list. And then the name will be also users. So let's check if it's working. So now we are on /users and we see our new component. Now what we want to do is to move our component users list from views to components. And actually source components is the place inside Vue, inside the file structure that Vue CLI generated for us for sharable component. And as you can see here, we have already hello world component. We won't use it, we actually need to delete it at some point. But for now I want to move this file users list from here to our components. So actually now we have users list in components folder, which means we are planning to make it shareable. So now let's check what we can do. So here we leave everything as it is, we don't actually change anything, and we can simply use this component everywhere. So let's try to use it now inside our users. How can we do that? First of all, we need to register this users list component as a dependency of our users component. And for this, we need to import here our users list from, and here will be add, and add it is source, then components, and here will be users list. And now inside we need to create new property components, and this is a property which is an object, and inside we can write users list. And this is exactly the way how we register components inside other components, because without this code we can't really write, for example here inside div we can't write users. Actually it is users list. So when we write something like this and we reload the page, you can see that we are getting an error. Okay, we are getting other error, users list defined but never used. This is because we have here unused import. But now when I reload the page, you can see that we are getting warning, failed to resolve component users list, which means this component is not actually registered for our users component. This is why we need to register it like this inside our component. So here we register it inside components, and now inside we can render our users list. So for this we are writing users list like this. So let's check in browser. As you can see, now our component is rendered and is working correctly. Now, one point about rendering components. As you can see, our users list component and the name here is camel case. So you can see it here. Here is on the right our name, users list, and we can render it differently. So first of all, we can write it with dashes like I wrote, and for me it is preferable way because it is like HTML is written. And secondly, we can write it with camel case like this, and it will also work. There is no difference, so just take what you want. I prefer to use dashes. So this is how we render our sharable components, and in this case, users list for us is a sharable component, so we can reuse it now everywhere. And for example, here we are rendering our users list. But what problem do we have now? Actually, if we will look inside our users list, this component is not shareable for us. Why is that? Because we have users data inside this component, which means we can't really use it between different pages. Because let's say we have a page with favorites users, then there we have favorites users data. And then we have the page with latest or latest edit users, and there we have another data. But actually for now we have all this data inside this component. And this is not reusable because these users are binded actually to this component. What we want to do, we want to move them outside. So we want to make this component completely stateless. This component doesn't know anything, it just receives data from outside and just renders this data. So what we want to do is, first of all, I will remove actually cut users from here completely, and then I will jump inside our users view that we created, and now I will paste it here. Actually not like this, we need here to write data, and inside we want to return an object, and now inside I can paste it. So we have here also data, return users. So just to remind you, with data we can create properties inside components. So in this case we are defining user inside our users. Why it is important? This is parent component. This is exactly the component which defines the data. In the real application, you will make a real API call in this component to get the data. But for now, we're starting with mock data like this, but actually our shareable component doesn't need to have any data inside. But now the question is how we can provide this data users inside our component. And this is exactly the step inside parent-child communication. So what we want to do, we want inside our users list now to define the properties that we can pass inside our component. So in this case, we are rendering users, so we need here to define our properties with users. How we can do that? For this, we need here to write property props, and here we want to define users. So actually inside props, you are defining everything that you want to pass inside this component. So here are our users, and we want to say here, this is also an object, array, and required true. And this is super important, because with props you can define really what your component needs. In this case, we are saying, okay, we want property users, and it should be for sure an array, and it is required, which means our component can't work without users. Now let's look in browser. And when we reload the page, you can see that we have really strange error, but actually this error is really awesome, unexpected mutation of users prop. What does it mean? Actually, we can't mutate props, which means here we're using users. So for example, in V4, this is fine, but where it is not fine is here when we are doing, for example, push, or here when we are assigning inside these users. Why is that? Because previously this users was just local property, but not anymore. Now for us, users is a props, which means we are passing it from outside. And Vue is really awesome in this part because it says directly with arrow that we can't mutate props. And this is really nice because you will have super small time to debug in some magic because you are saying here that you can't mutate props. So actually we can't do this and we can't push here. So for now, I will just comment this code out. In any case, we need to refactor it. But as you can see now in browser, we don't have this error anymore. Now we have another error. New user is assigned, but its value is never used. So here we have somewhere on 35 line, this is our new user. Of course, we need to comment this out because ESLint is just saying that these are unused properties. As you can see now, we don't have any errors. And now when I'm reloading the page, you can see that no users are rendered. And this is because of this warning. So here is a warning, missing required props users. So we said that we need a property users from outside, but we didn't provide it inside. So how we can provide from the parent this property? So let's jump back inside users. Here we have these users, and to provide them, we need to use exactly property binding. So here will be users equal users. So we talked about it in the previous video about property binding. If you didn't watch it, go watch it now. I will link the link in the description box below. And here actually we are defining with colon users the property binding to this property. So this is how we are passing properties inside our component. So here we are saying, okay, we want to pass this array of users inside our users list component. Now when we are reloading page, we don't have any errors. And as you can see, we are rendering all our users. So this is exactly the way how parent communicates with child. So we're just passing the properties with the help of property binding. Now let's have a look inside our users list. So what do we have here? We have two methods, remove user and add user. And actually, first of all, they won't work here because we can't modify props. And secondly, this is in any case the bad place to have them here. Why is that? Because actually we want to make our users list component stateless. And actually we don't know what from outside we want to do with the data. Maybe we need to do an API call for the different pages, so it will be really defined from the parent. And secondly, we can't really change our props. What we need to do is to say outside what happened. So what is happening? User clicked remove button or user clicked add button. So this is exactly what we want to do here. So inside our function remove user, we don't need this users filter. Actually, I will leave it for now because we want to copy it. But what we need to do is use this $emit, and here will be remove user, ID. So what we are doing here is emitting a property. And this is the string what we are emitting, and here are some params. So we're using emit to communicate with parent. And this is exactly what we want to do. We want to say for our parent that something happened. Now the question is how we can subscribe to this remove user. So for this, inside our users view, we can use here add remove user. And this is exactly event binding from the previous video. So here we have add, and normally we had click there, but now we have our custom event remove user. And what we want to do here is call remove user. Now we need to create here remove user function. For this, at the bottom we can add methods. We already did it previously, and inside methods we can define remove user function. And as an argument we are getting here ID, and let's console log remove user in parent, and here will be our ID. Now let's check if it's working. As you can see in browser, we are getting an error, custom event name remove user must be kebab case. And this is actually the linting rule that I didn't like, but we use what we have, because I don't want to change any linter rules. The problem is that we are meeting here remove user, and they want it to be kebab case, which means with the dash, remove user like this. And as you can see now, we don't have any errors here, but when we're reloading the property and we're clicking remove user, you can see that we're getting this remove user 1, but not event from the outside. Why it is happening? Because here in the users view, we need to write remove user also with the dash. Now it should work. So let's reload the page and click remove user. Now, as you can see, we have first of all remove user in the child and then remove user in parent. So this is super important, and this is actually only in view 3 to write our events with the kebab, so with dashes, and actually what is in value doesn't matter. So this is why we need to emit in the child the name here, the string with the dash. And here is our parameter ID. Now what we want to do, we want to copy this line where we're filtering the users and use it inside users view. So here inside remove user in parent, I will just paste this line. So this is exactly how we worked with users previously. So here we want to filter our users, and we simply filter them because we received the event from our child that we need to remove the user from our array. Now let's check if it's working. So if we look in browser and reload the page, and here we're clicking remove, as you can see the first item was removed. So actually everything is working like previously, but now we don't have remove user function inside our child component. It is in parent, and parent decides what we need to do with the data. In our child, we have only this remove user, where we are just emitting the action. And this is just remove user string, where we are passing our ID. So we don't change any data, and we simply render them. Now we need to do the same with add user. So here we have click, this is completely fine. The model also stays here, but we want to move all this code inside the parent. So I will open parent here on the right so you can see better. So here we want to have add user function, and actually we want to get here a parameter which will be new username, because here we had this new username in the component, but now we want to emit it, and now outside we can generate it. So actually I will cut all code from here and just put it inside add user in parent. So I will just uncomment it, and now the only thing here that we want to change is this new username, because here we want to use new username as a parameter. And now then here we want just this $emit, and here will be add user with the dash, and here we are passing this new username. And this is exactly the parameter that we are getting in parent. So this is how we are emitting some events for our parent. Now in parent here on the top, we need to add our new event. So it will be add user, and here the function will be add user. So let's save this and check in browser if it's working. So now we are typing something and we are clicking add user. And as you can see on the bottom, we have this new user. But now this was actually just emit from the child, and now in parent we are rendering this object. So what happened? Now our component is completely stateless. Let's check this. We have here two emits. We have here the URL. Actually, we don't need it, so I will remove it. So here is just new user name. We are using it inside this component to make a sync. And here we don't need our href. And here we have two functions, remove user and add user. And we don't have any data because we are getting them through props. In this video, you learned really a lot. First of all, we created our sharable component users list, and we splitted all logic between parent and child. Now our users list is completely stateless, and we're just getting properties from our parent. This is how parent-child communicates. And at the moment when child needs to notify parent about some changes, we're using emit, and this is it. And if View for Beginners course is too easy for you, you can always go and check my Advanced View course, which is going 10 hours, where we're creating the real application from start to the end. And I will link it down in the description box below, as well as all my other courses. And if you like this video and you want more content like this, don't forget to put thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in my next video.